Hello everyone, I am Akansha Arora, Faculty of Journalism and Mass Communication from Tecnia Institute of Advanced Study. Today I am sharing my thoughts on food self-sufficiency. Food self-sufficiency have moved higher on the policy agenda in a number of countries following the extreme food price volatility experienced during the 2007-8 food crisis and its aftershocks. Countries are diverse as single India, the phenomena, Qatar, Brazil and Russia have all expressed interest in improving their levels of food self-sufficiency. The policy turn has been widely criticized as being misguided. The Financial Times, for example, noted in a 2009 editorial on the topic that the aim of self-sufficiency in food would be discussed quality. Financial Times. The debate over the food self-sufficiency is often caused as one in which economic reasoning and political imperatives clash. On the hand, promotes of food self-sufficiency define the political right of a state to inoculate themselves from the worries of world food markets by increasing their reliance on domestic food production. On the other hand, crisis argues that there are higher costs of states that prioritizing political over economic consideration in setting food policies. The paper examines the concept of food self-sufficiency in context of debates on trades and food security and market the case that policy choice on issues is far from straightforward binary choice between the extreme reliance solely on homogeneous food and a full open trade policy for foodstuff. It shows that in a practice, food sufficiency is defined and measured in a number of different ways. The paper argues that taking a broader understanding of the concept opens up space for considering food self-sufficiency policy in a more mannered way rather than as an ideal policy choice. Conceptualizing food self-sufficiency in a relative term and policy to support it along continuous between clouds borders and fully open trade allows for greater consideration of instance when the pursuit of policies to increase country food production for its own domestic consumption may provide both economic and political benefits. First selection of the paper provides an overview of the concept of food self-sufficiency and the various ways which is typically defined and measured. Sections 2 outlines recent trends in food self-sufficiency for both the world population and for countries. The third selection sketches out the evolution of policy debate on this question, showing that food self-sufficiency has long been a key concern of states, and how recent critics of the idea have pointed in a binary terms. Selection 4 discusses how a conceptualizing of the idea relative term along a continuum can help to open space to consider the way in which the risk of food self-sufficiency as outlined by its critics might be weighted against the risk of relying too heavily on world markets to ensure an adequate and sustainable food supply. Food self-sufficiency is often used term but frequently left undefined by those who employ it. This is maybe because there is more than one definition of the concept. The FAQ 1990 defined it in broad terms. The concept of food sufficiency is generally taken to mean the extreme to which a country can satisfy its food needs from its own domestic production. This understanding will diagnose the line that indicates where food production is equal to food consumption, represent 100% food self-sufficiency. The further defined by plotting individual countries onto it shows where they fall relative to the 100% self-sufficiency line. Some countries would fall over the line indicating that they are more than self-sufficiency, and some countries would fall below it indicating they are food benefits. This basic definition, a country producing sufficient food to cover its own needs, is how people typically understand the idea of food self-sufficiency. But some aspects of it are still fuzzy. It is nuclear, for example, whether a country that pursues food self-sufficiency still engage in food trade with other countries. Determining how trade fits into the food self-sufficiency policy of individual country requires further refinement of the definition of the concept and clarification with respect to how it guided government policy choice. Some analysis define food self-sufficiency as a country achieving all domestic food production to meet its food needs. The definition can be categorized as a country closing its border and adapting completely accurately for its food sector. An extreme policy sustained such as this is very rare in practice. All countries rely on imports for at least some of their food consumption, including large food exports that produce far more food than they consume. Even North Korea, the country with policies that most approach, still imparts food and accepts international food assistance. Give the prevalence of trade today's global economy a more understanding of food self-sufficiency in domestic food production. That is equal to or exceed 100% of a country food consumption. Trade is not ruled out with this definition, as food self-sufficiency is defined by the ratio of food production to a food consumed at a domestic level. Understood this way, food self-sufficiency is not necessarily focused on where specific foods are grown, but rather on a country domestic food production capacity. Under this definition, food self-sufficiency countries may still pursue a degree of agriculture specialization in order to trade these foods with other countries. The key points is that food self-sufficiency countries produce an amount of food that is equal to or greater than the amount of food that they consume. A key indicator that captures this more practical understanding of the concept is self-sufficiency ratio (SSR), which expresses food production as a ratio of available supply as depicted by the following equation. The SSR can be further refined to include fluctuations in the level of domestic food stocks. The SSR can be measured in either in volume of food produced by the country, although it can also be calculated based on monetary values. The SSR is typically calculated for a specific commodity or a class of commodities such as rice, wheat, etc. The FAQ recommends cautions in applying the SSR concept to the overall food situation of a country because it may mask intents where a country produces one food commodity in abundance while needing to rely on imports for the food commodities. Most of SSR analysis focus on the key steps such as remedy routes in order to give approximation of food self-sufficiency of a country. Food self-sufficiency can be measured in terms of country, territory, energy production per capita. Countries that produce 2500 quintal or more per person per day are typically considered to be self-sufficiency as consumption of the least. This may clearance as per day is seen by most nutritious to be necessary to ensure adequate diet. Analysis by Prokta et al. Level classified food production between 2000 and 2500 quintal per person per day is insufficient and production below 2000 quintal per day as low. The various indicators of food self-sufficiency give some clues as to a trade and food security status of countries, but they are not the same thing. Under both the SSR, DEP measures of food self-sufficiency, for example, a self-sufficiency country can be active importer and exporter of food. Most of the food exporting countries are typically also self-sufficient and most net food importing countries are not sufficient. But this is not necessarily always the case. Similarly, food self-sufficiency does not guarantee food security within a country, although two concepts related to one another. A country is considered food secure if food is available, accessible and nutrition and sustainable across the other three dimensions. But food security as a concept does not distinguish whether that food is imported from the abroad or grown domestically. Food self-sufficiency, on the other hand, is focused on the supply or availability of the food and is concerned with ensuring that the country has capacity to produce food in sufficient quantities to meet its domestic needs. Some analysis also seen self-sufficiency as supporting sustainability in the food supply, while others counted that it can contribute to insensitivity. Part of what makes food self-sufficiency a complex issue is that different countries face diverse situations that make policy generalize very difficult. For example, some countries that are more than self-sufficient in food at a country level but still have high level of hunger and nutrition among their population. Countries in the situations may produce more than enough of some food crops due to little of others that are required for a healthy diet. High levels of poverty in some self-sufficiency countries may higher food access for certain segments of the population. Other self-sufficiency countries, on the other hand, have little difficulty in ensuring that their population have access to adequate and nutrition diet. Likewise, some countries that have SSR well below 100% may have no problem in securing adequate food supplies for their population through a reliance on international trade. High income countries, for example, can easily afford imported food even when food prices on world market are high and volatile. Yet others countries with SSR below 100% may find it very difficult to secure adequate food imports for their population. Each country faces a unique set of circumstances regarding its availability to command food for its population, depending on its productive capacity, availability to import food, and availability to equitable distribute food domestically. That's all from my side. I hope this lecture will help you to understand the topic. Thank you very much.